In today's video, I'm going to be reacting to the online gambling trap explained. And in this video, I want to speak as a recovering gambling addict to give you my perspective and talk about, hey, what's going on in the brain of a gambling addict? But before I dive into the content, I just have one favor to ask from you. There's so many of you that watch this channel regularly, but you haven't yet hit that subscribe button. Maybe you think you did, but you haven't yet. If you do me the favor of just checking to see if you're subscribed, it would do this channel a world of good. And my promise is that I'm going to continue to work hard each and every day to spread the message that gambling addiction is real.
This is the crazy world of online gambling. In 2024, casinos made over $72 billion, which is enough money to spend $1 million per day for 190 years straight, and you'd still have money left over, making for 190 years.
190 years, $1 million a day, and that's what casinos made last year.
$52 billion, which is enough. In 2024, casinos made left over, making gambling one of the largest industries in the world. But it gets worse. Online casinos have figured out how to exploit the most vulnerable players to make millions of dollars off of their losses and keep them coming back for more. As online gambling has grown more and more, they've started to target a very specific type of person. And it's not necessarily who you would expect.
Why now? Why this book right now?
I mean, I think we're at a point of what I would call a public health crisis.
If it didn't win, it had literally become a matter of life and death, and I was going to go and kill myself.
Gambling addiction has the highest rate of suicidality of any addiction. So 1 in 5 problem gamblers will attempt to take their own life. I'm going to imagine that the guy's going to be talking about how younger people are more at risk for a gambling addiction because it's online. But I'm interested to see, because he said it's probably the group that I least expect. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a gambling addict and I was a young guy that got hooked to gambling, but the group that I would least expect would probably be like middle-aged moms. But even I know that they're getting hooked to gambling, but that's the group I would guess I least expect. But yeah, I guess we'll see what he has to say.
Have been addicted to gambling for a while now. In fact, some evidence suggests that gambling existed even before written history. Cavemen would play a form of dice using small animal bones with markings, and later in 3000 BC in Mesopotamia, they developed the first version of the 6-sided dice we use today.
Imagine explaining to a Mesopotamian how to play mines on roulette. That would be ridiculous. That would break their mind.
Thousands of years, gambling evolved from bones to dice to playing cards to betting on animals and more, all centered on 3 core principles. These 3 things are the only thing you need available for something to be considered gambling. Number 1, the wager itself. How much money or tokens or things are you willing to bet? And that wager is then placed on number 2, an event with an uncertain outcome. And finally, number 3, the most important thing we care about, the prize. What do I get if I win the bet?
For context, a group like Gamblers Anonymous, which is like the support group for people with gambling addictions, their definition of gambling is any betting or wagering for self or others, whether for money or not, no matter how slight or insignificant, where the outcome is uncertain or depends upon chance or skill. So in this guy's definition, it requires that you win money. In their definition, it technically doesn't. You'd just be making like mental bets or like a friendly like verbal wager with your friend. So I guess it depends how extreme you want to get with it, but wanted to throw that extra definition out there for someone who might be struggling with an addiction as well.
For example, in horse racing, you place your bet, which is the wager, on a specific horse winning, which is the event with an uncertain outcome. And if you win, you could walk away with double your money. In theory, you can bet on just about anything. Will my team win tonight? Who will be the next James Bond? Will the price of Ozempic fall before February? And this is exactly what hooks our brains into the idea of gambling.
But I mean, and with the accessibility of things like Kalshi, which I'm sure he's going to talk about, like literally everything is gamblified, gamblified. Everything is now gambling. You can gamble on literally anything, and you have platforms that allow you that access.
To understand just how deep the psychological manipulation goes, I had to dig into decades of research on gambling addiction and brain chemistry. In 2006, Congress passed the Security and Accountability for Every Port Act, which sounds like it has nothing to do with gambling,
Right.
which it didn't. But buried deep within the walls of text of this act is what created the modern gambling industry we see today. The Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, which was inside of the Security and Accountability for Every Port
I hate how the government does that. They bury like bills inside of other bills so that things get passed through. This is probably a great example.
Act banned gambling companies from taking money over the internet, which was the government's workaround way, not necessarily to ban gambling, but they made it impossible for the gambling to actually happen online. But two companies figured out a little loophole in the UIGEA that turned them into the gambling juggernauts we know today as DraftKings and FanDuel. You see, what they found was that although the act banned online gambling, it had a special carve-out defining what a gambling bet or wager actually is. But before we get to that, I should explain the difference between a chance game and a skills game. Gambling by definition.
And this is going to be very loose because skill is going to be gambling as well. But what he's going to be definitely getting at is this idea of fantasy sports not being counted as real gambling. And it's crazy the lengths that they went to lobby that.
Definition is playing a game of chance for money. Chance is the unknown aspect or the random unpredictableness of gambling. When you press the button on a slot machine, there is zero skill required for you to win or lose. It's completely up to chance. But skills games, that's a whole different thing. When playing a skills game, the outcome is mainly based on the skills of the player, not the random chance of probability.
Mainly being a really generous term there. Like if you're really, really knowledgeable about football, thinking that's going to help you pick better fantasy teams, it's kind of ridiculous. It's still so much luck. There's a little common sense to it, but the large majority of it's luck. But let's see what kind of crap they got away with.
And because of that, a skills-based game is not technically considered gambling, which made it legal while all other forms of online betting were completely outlawed. Fantasy Sports Live came first, then we saw the rise of DraftKings and FanDuel, all marketing daily fantasy sports betting. Instead of betting on the outcome of a sports game, they allowed users to create fantasy teams and bet on their fantasy outcomes. Because building the right fantasy team requires skill, or so they argued. Through player research, data analysis, salary cap management, and game lineup strategy, fantasy games were skills-based games, thus not gambling. DraftKings and FanDuel grew steadily through their fantasy games until 2018 when the Supreme Court overturned a previous law outlawing sports betting, which basically opened up the floodgates for these two companies. Since then, they've gone on to be
And what else happened was like while they were following the rules and building up their fantasy sports rather than the sports betting side, they were creating this giant list of players and getting this giant group of people hooked to the idea of betting money daily on the outcome of sports so that when this law got overturned and when these people turned 21, they're right there for the picking. And that's why if you go to a daily fantasy sports app like a FanDuel or a DraftKings, you see a button right at the top that takes you to their sports book. It was a funnel the entire time, and it was built to allow this to happen legally under what the American law said, but also just to allow them to build up a giant client list of problem gamblers to then exploit in the future. And I hope that this is what the guy talks about next here.
Become two of the largest sports betting companies in the world, controlling over 90% of the market through their websites, taking the world of gambling from back alleys and mafia meetings to every corner of the country and across every TV in America. And as it exploded, the casinos and sportsbooks got way smarter about who they targeted. Because after all, they don't make money on people who win. They want to find the biggest losers and push them for all they've got. But first, let's take a look at how easy it is to get hooked on gambling.
The mass legalization and normalization of sports gambling has the potential to rival the opioid epidemic in the United States. It's destruction of the American family unit.
So I live in Texas, where real money, online casinos, and sports betting are illegal. But as with everything, there are loopholes. Meet stake.us, not to be confused with stake.com.
Now, in fairness, this is kind of getting overturned in some states, but listen to this loophole.
Although they are the same entity, one is considered a real money online casino and the other a sweepstakes casino,
Right.
meaning that instead of betting real money, I'm simply buying tokens and then using those tokens to place my bets on the games. So if I were to play a game like Plinko here, it's completely legal in Texas if I play using these gold coins. And if I win some money, I can convert it to stake cash and then withdraw my stake cash through gift cards or cryptocurrency,
What a loophole.
which seems completely normal and not fishy at all. The casinos don't care how you gamble. They just care about taking the money from your wallet and putting it into theirs. And
The casinos don't care how you gamble. They care about taking the money from your wallet and putting it into theirs. That's incredibly well said. There's so many of these loopholes that exist, and the reason that these loopholes are exploited, the reason that these laws are crafted is not to protect players, it's to make money. What do they care where you gamble? What do they care if it's some kind of crypto coin that you're exchanging for real value? They care that you keep gambling. They don't care how the money leaves their platform because they know it's coming back.
they do that through complex psychological tricks that you don't even realize are happening until it's too late.
It tracks back to this behavior loop that I call the scarcity loop. It's got opportunity, unpredictable rewards, and quick repeatability.
Yep.
Opportunity, you have an opportunity to get something of value. So in the case of a slot machine, it's money. 2, unpredictable rewards. You know you're going to get the thing of value if you continue the behavior, but you don't know when, and you don't know how valuable it's going to be. So with a slot machine game, when those reels are spinning, you could win nothing. You could basically lose your money. You could win a couple dollars, or you could win a life-changing amount of money.
And that's the fallacy that keeps people going back, thinking, I'm going to win eventually. Well, sure, dude, you might eventually get a nice little hit on a slot machine, but how much are you losing in that chase? And what's going to happen after that point? Once you've been conditioned, once you've developed the behavior of clicking, clicking, clicking. They're creating a system where it doesn't matter if you win because you're eventually going to lose. That's why I always say that all wins are future losses.
And then 3, quick repeatability. You can immediately repeat the behavior.
Yep.
And the crazy part is that this 3-part system is all around us on a daily basis. The system is designed to make you want to repeat a behavior. So whether it's pressing the button on a slot machine, refreshing your Instagram feed, or buying more stocks on Robinhood, you are continuously coming
Oh, and Robinhood is just gambling at this point. The whole platform's just been built into a gambling platform.
back to see if your post is doing better than last time, if your stocks have gone up, or if you got a new match on Tinder. You don't know what you're gonna get, but the unpredictable nature is what keeps you coming back to check over and over again.
Yeah. The guy Pavlov, when he had those dogs and ran those experiments, he found that an intermittent reward system was the most addictive. So if you went and you hit a button and every single time that you would win, you would actually get really bored of that. It becomes too predictable. But this idea that if you hit a button, you're not sure what's going to happen, it motivates you. It produces dopamine in your brain that makes you hit that button again and again and again and again, chasing after that proposed reward. There was actually this episode of The Twilight Zone where a guy ended up in his version of hell, and his wish was that every time that he gambled, he would win. But after enough times had passed by, he became miserable because he was so sick of the same mundane thing happening again. We think as gambling addicts that we want to get a big win. And of course, who doesn't want more money? But what we really want is the thrill, the anticipation of what is going to happen next.
And the casinos, to their credit, have mastered the game of psychology. They understand that the thing that keeps us coming back for more is the dopamine rush we get. But
Right.
the weird part is the dopamine rush doesn't even happen when you win the mega jackpot. Instead, the largest surge of dopamine in your brain comes right before you find out if you won.
Yep.
While the ball is spinning around the roulette wheel or while the slots are flying by.
The
In that
anticipation.
small window of time, your body's dopamine levels skyrocket throughout your brain because you have no idea what could happen next. Your brain is convinced that you are about to win $1 million. And that feeling is exactly what hooks people into gambling and keeps them coming back for more. Because in your head, there's a chance that this next round might be the big winner.
And that's what leads to gambling addicts not stopping despite the negative consequences, because we think, well, you know what, we didn't get it yet, but it's coming. It's the only addiction where we convince ourselves that doing more of the addiction is going to solve the problems that we created from the addiction.
And even if you are actually winning, the casinos won't let that happen for very long. But if you're losing, they'll roll out the red carpet for you, which still leaves the question of who are they targeting with these games? If they're so good with psychology, shouldn't they know exactly who they need to market to in order to make the most money? Yes. Yes, they do. But the question we need to answer before this is what happens with all of the money? Surely the government isn't going to let this infinite money glitch happen without getting a piece of the pie. In 2024, commercial gaming revenue, which included land-based casinos, sports betting, and online gambling, hit a record of $72 billion in the US. Of that $72 billion, $16 billion was allocated to state and local governments for taxes. So it's definitely not a small amount of money. And lobbyists have argued
it's not a small amount of money by any means. It's huge. But what does this say? Well, it says that there's a lot of profit to be made by the casinos regardless. And it says that the government's getting $16 billion. Sounds good. Except we have to consider the fact that along with the revenues that come in, tax-wise, there's damages that are coming into society because of gambling addiction. And according to the National Council on Problem Gambling's recent estimate, there's a $14 billion annual social cost of damages caused by gambling addiction. So now cut that 16 down to 2. I mean, who wouldn't want $2 billion, right? But it's not what they were promised. The take isn't as good as what the casinos promised the government
for taxes. So it's definitely not a small amount of money. And lobbyists have argued that the states are better off legalizing gambling and collecting the tax revenue because if they didn't, people would find ways to gamble anyway, but the government wouldn't get any bit of it. Which makes sense. They'd rather just have it out in the open versus hidden in the shadows. They also argue that it's a form of painless taxation. In other words, it's a way for the government to increase taxes without actually increasing the tax burden on all citizens.
Gambling has been referred to as a tax on the stupid. I've heard that, but painless is a new one for me. And yeah, there is this assumption that, you know, if you don't gamble, you're not going to be impacted by it. But as we just talked about, these annual social costs, you're paying higher taxes for less services, even if you don't gamble.
There's also an argument to be made that gambling and casinos increase tourism and job growth, which I can definitely understand. Therefore, I guess it makes sense to leave it up to the people to decide whether or not they want to participate. But there's still some issues I have with the way they market it, because the victims these casinos are going after might surprise you. You see, as we've learned, these gambling corporations are very good at what they do. Most of the gamblers that feed these businesses are highly educated, high-earning, financially literate men. They're typically overconfident and think they have more control over their bets than they actually do, and they're making enough disposable income to convince themselves that they can risk more than they actually have. But
well, I didn't predict that. I was not what I guessed, but I think it totally makes sense. I think that's been the stereotype, so I guess it kind of was more expected than I had predicted. But then again, I'm biased because I'm in this world. I see it all today. Like, I see it all the time. It's funny that he uses Trevor Wallace as the B-roll here. I think that's pretty funny. He's a comedian, and he's probably going to get a DraftKings sponsorship sooner or later. But with that being said, like, it makes sense that they're going after a group of people that are seen as having a high level of disposable income. That shouldn't be a shock.
But in reality, the average gambler is carrying between $50,000 to $90,000 in debt, often resorting to using credit cards to pay down their debt, only feeding the debt cycle even more.
And I would imagine that debt's inclusive of like all of their debt, like their commercial debt, like as well as maybe gambling debt that's been accrued. But it shows that gambling is being pitched as a way to kind of get out of a bad financial situation when the reality is much, much different. It actually makes the situation a lot worse.
That said, there's also a scientific reason that casinos target these men. With an overwhelming 82% of gamblers being men between the ages of 18 and 35, casinos have figured out the key to creating degenerate gamblers. By targeting young men, they're going after individuals who don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the exact piece of your brain that handles risk assessment and decision making. Basically, your brain breaks things down between two systems. System one is your fast, reactive, gut feeling decisions, while system 2 is your slow, methodical, and logical decision-making tree. I'll let you guess which system casinos want to leverage. System 1. Obviously. Before your prefrontal cortex is fully developed, young men largely rely on system 1 thinking, which explains a lot of the dumb decisions we all made growing up. But it doesn't stop there. By targeting system 1 thinking, casinos get you to impulsively bet higher amounts, bet more often, and keep coming back for more even after you've lost big. Because deep down in your gut, you know there's always going to be a win on the other side of all those losses.
That's why they say like that bullshit of like 99% of gamblers quit before they win big. It's a way of people who are struggling with a problem to come together and say, well, let's just make the excuse to do one more because it could go differently this time. It's really just a scary addiction once you get hooked to it, because it might seem like a joke at first. Hey, how do you get hooked to losing money? But it really is so insidious because you think, if I just keep going, it'll finally work out. It's going to be different. Then I'm going to be more responsible once I win the next one. But you're just really throwing fuel on the fire.
Now, after the Supreme Court ruling in 2018, every casino saw the writing on the wall. DraftKings and FanDuel had led the charge, and now everyone wanted in on the action, which is why we now see countless ads on TV advertising sports betting with celebrities like Post Malone, Kevin Hart, or LeBron James. Basically, the casinos figured out that not only can they extract all of the money out of your wallet, but they can also bring in new bettors by making it look like the cool thing to do.
Yep.
You can't even watch an NBA highlights video on YouTube without getting an ad for a gambling company.
Right.
And because of this constant flow of gambling ads, it's become the new thing in college towns. It seems like every guy at the bar on a Saturday night is talking about the parlay they have tomorrow that they just know will hit if Josh Allen can just run more than 10 yards.
That's why I'm working on a video right now where I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to a bunch of people in a frat, because I want to hear what their perception of their gambling is versus the reality. How much do they think they're up? How much do they think they gamble versus the truth?
Not only that, but the casinos throw in bonus bets or risk-free bets to get you to try it out. And they're hoping that that innocent $10 bet you just placed on the Sunday night football game will turn you into their next honeypot. Between sports betting and prediction sites like Kalshi or Polymarket, you can place a bet on just about anything in the world today.
Yep.
Even the specific word the White House press secretary will say in her next press briefing. The question is, how far is too far? I'm all for free markets and letting people decide what to do with their own money, but as the marketing has skewed more and more to entangle young men in the world of gambling, is there a point where we need to step in and draw a line? Let me know in the comments below.
I don't know if any change is going to be made until enough damage has been done. And that's the scary part about it. I think this guy put together a really nice, well-structured video here. And I want to thank him for putting it up so that we could react to it and have a conversation about it. But the world is heading in a direction for gambling addicts that is not good. We need to remember that people with gambling addictions are at the highest risk of any addiction to commit suicide. This is a real issue. And if you need further proof about that, then I want you to watch this video next. And let's keep getting better together, one day at a time.